Good evening and welcome to the Education Verdict. Straight questions, real answers, no fluff. Co-powered by Hop Class and Mayoor School, Jaipur. Last December, Australia did something no country had done before. It banned children under 16 from social media entirely. Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, X, all blocked for underage users. Massive fines for platforms that do not comply. France followed, Malaysia followed, several countries across Europe and Asia are moving in the same direction. And this month, right here in India, Karnataka joined that list. This is not coincidence, this is a response to something we are only now beginning to understand. Because for years, we believed the problem was content, what children were watching, what they were exposed to. But today, the conversation is shifting from content to design. Platforms designed with no natural stopping point, infinite scroll, content that keeps playing without you asking for it, notifications that pull you back again and again and again. Systems are not optimized for well-being, but for attention. And when that design meets a child whose brain is still developing, the outcome is not accidental. It is predictable. So tonight, this is not just a debate about banning apps. This is a debate about something far more fundamental. Did we hand children a tool or did we place them inside a system that was never designed for them to win? Let us begin. Joining me tonight are 4 school leaders who deal with this reality every single day. Not in theory, but in their corridors, their counseling rooms, and their parent meetings. Minal Desai, Director of James Genesis International School, Ahmedabad. Saurav Sinha, Principal of Mayo College, Ajmer. Sachin Vats, Director of Gurukul, the school, Ghaziabad. And Sharad Tiwari, Principal of Mayoor School, Chopasani, Jodhpur. A very warm welcome to all 4 of you. Before we go anywhere else, I want to know where each of you stand. Simple question. Should India ban social media for children below 15? Yes or no? No explanation yet, just your position.
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
4 school leaders, 4 different cities, 4 different communities. Let's go deeper. In your school, at what age are children actually getting their first smartphone? Saurav, I'll start with you.
So, I mean, since we're a boarding school, they don't have I don't know what age they get them. It depends really on their parents. But on campus, we've banned smartphones. I just, coming to social, just want to say a word about, I think the term social media is a misnomer. I think it's more anti-social media because if you look at, I'm used to this all the time, and if you observe it, you go to a restaurant and there are 4 people from a family sitting and all 4 of them are on their phones. So we've swapped meaningful interaction for meaningless communication, and I don't think that's being social. I think that's being anti-social really. So that's something I'd like to put out there.
And how about you, Minal? You come from a day school in Ahmedabad. I mean, what is the age your children are getting their first smartphone?
So phones are of course banned in the school, but I find parents giving, so even before the phones come tablets, and children as young as preschool years, early years, they are oftentimes when we meet them for interactions or in the classrooms, we hear a YouTube speech. Their accents are sometimes British and American, while the child has never traveled to those countries because they consume so much of content online. As far as smartphones go, I believe almost most families, by the time the child turns 10 or 11, have this pressure of giving them a phone. There is a rising trend of educated parents who are saying no to screens and all of that, but in a majority, and this is not just our own school, I would say this is happening across the board, where by as good as 8, 10 or 12 years, children have access to smartphones, and oftentimes it is given in the name of safety. That if a child steps out or main bahar gayi to something. So in order to keep the child safe, that device is given. And then all of us know what ensues thereafter. But yeah, so smartphones come pretty early to most students in today's day.
So Sharad sir, what's the scene in your school in Jodhpur?
Yeah, about the same. 12 to 14 is when probably a child gets his own personal smartphone. But I think even earlier when the child is very young, I think if it is the time, the generation where the mothers have doled out a smartphone to a child as a babysitter, then probably a child cannot distinguish whether it's his personal phone and all. So it is a real serious matter.
Sachin.
I'll second what Sharad sir and Minal ji was saying. It is much before they come to school. I think parents today, like my school is in Ghaziabad, and in that area, I feel it's a style statement to perhaps give this statement, this phone to the child.
Status symbol.
Status symbol, and like to keep him engaged. Perhaps there's a mindset that much before the child goes to school, my child should not miss anything. So when he is going to appear for an interview in the school, he must know everything. So that's the mindset, and perhaps that's the reason parents, they have all parenting books in their mind and give them the device much before they come to school.
In your honest assessment, has social media changed the emotional landscape of your students in the last 3 years? In no order, anyone can come in.
I'd like to just say that it's not just social media that has changed. Social media definitely has played a role in it, but more than that, I believe what has changed the emotional landscape, and yes, it has changed the emotional landscape, what has changed is multiple things of an evolving society. So there are smaller families today than what they were earlier. There's a lot more migration, which means for a child to have access to nana, nani, bua, fua, whatever is more and more challenging. Children today make fewer friends thanks to the device they have in their hand and all of it. So all of that combined, the urbanization, the economic pull that the parent faces, the amount of time that the parent is genuinely able to give back home, all of that combined has led to children constantly seeking validation and seeking company from the device. And does that make them restless? Yes. Is it difficult for us to maintain their attention in the classrooms? Yes. So yeah, that's what I've noticed, I'm sure.
Social media has also evolved. It started with simple networking online, but now I think the big tech companies were always grooming prospective consumer population. So the influences and the advertisements, the promos that are embedded in these social networks, I think that's also influencing kids. And you mentioned about the reward cycles. We were just talking about the reward cycle for a child. We were discussing a child, and it's the dopamine circuit that probably gets in a preferred mode when a child is getting his high, working on or connecting through a handheld device. So obviously it's going to have a compromise on the social skills of a child when he goes out in the real world. So it has ramifications, and also the content, the kind of content that is now freely available, which could be violent, misogynistic, even self-harm, suicidal tendencies that we are seeing in kids is because they are getting exposed. And a young mind is like a sponge which absorbs all these impressions. And it's very easy for a child to just practice that. It's what goes in the mind is just a step away from what a child does in the physical world. So it is having an impact on the kids, obviously.
So just to add to what Mr. Tiwari was saying, I totally agree. I think there are two aspects here. The first is, of course, that we all know that even adults who are sensitive and caring usually aren't so in pre-teens and teen ages. It's a very strange age. What this social media platforms have provided all kinds of shame and all kinds of embarrassment to become public. That is the reason why there is so much of depression, so much of anxiety, so much of organized bullying and ostracization of anybody who is not fitting a particular mold which is being sold to us by the marketing agencies. The second aspect really is that I think, what has happened is with this obsession of recording everything. So there's no point doing something if you're not showing it off on social media. And my concern is that this generation will then grow up with a series of recordings of memories of events that they never really experienced in the first place. Experiencing something is not important anymore. What is more important is letting people know that you were there. And these are the two things which have greatly, I think, impacted the emotional landscape of children over the last few years. Yeah.
Ravi, you must have heard a recent story from my city. 3 girls committed suicide by jumping
Some
from
Korea connection. Yeah.
They had jumped from the 7th floor of their house, and Korea culture, like they imitated like them. They had their unrealistic standards of comparison, the challenges in the family, the way relationships. So, children today, they are turning out to be emotionally weak because they don't understand relationship. Human beings are by default, they are social beings. They need to understand relationship, which can only happen when with human interactions. Now, human interaction is not happening. You are with this device day in, day out, right from the morning, and it's a quiet situation where it's a one-way thing, no pauses. Now, this is, it's programmed and engineered in such a way that it gives you, that craving for novelty, and that too without any pauses, as you mentioned. And when there are no pauses, it affects, and you are not able to, have control over your feelings, emotions, and you start dreaming and you start behaving, thinking like that. So I see lot of children, because there is loneliness, there is no parent taking the responsibility sometimes. The joint families are now, taking the back seat because of many reasons, and Delhi NCR happens to be area where people migrate from couple of tier 2, tier 3 cities, and here you stay in a high rise, and the impact is such that, when the child comes back home, he's only with the device, and when he's with the device, he's in some kind of a virtual world. So it is definitely impacting them.
Fair point. And the research is no longer ambiguous. I mean, children spending more than 3 hours a day on social media report significantly higher levels of anxiety, loneliness, and depression. Constant comparison, emotional triggers, public validation at a very fragile age. Is social media creating a mental health crisis in your schools, or are we blaming technology for deeper issues?
I think technology per se is something we have to embrace. Technology, I'm a very pro-technology person. But there is an addictive element, and we were just having a chat before this. Let's forget, we're focusing on children. Let's look at our own behavior. How long can we stay without a phone? How many hours do we spend on social media just looking at complete nonsense? And we are a generation where this technology emerged when we were well into our adult lives. So obviously, a generation which has been born into this, exposed to it, is going to be much more addicted. I think that the onus really now is on the governments and the agencies and parents to push the government, where there has to be a system of checking age and not allowing access definitely to certain kinds of social apps for children. Because, I mean, if I can be watching reels at 1 o'clock as my eyes are closing, I mean, how can I blame a child who's 14 if he's watching it till 4 o'clock?
Let me remind my viewers that the education verdict, our selection of speakers is very peculiar, very typical, because we are on a lookout for fearless school leaders who are not, concerned about the brands of the school that they run, and we invite them to our studios for that. So I'll remind that to all my panelists, and I would request your honest take on a very simple, I'll refine this question. Is there a mental health crisis in your school because of social media? Whether it is Instagram, whether it is TikTok, whether it is, I see it every day, day in and day out in the schools that I visit. Let's give an honest take on this particular.
Well, what I would say is that mental health issues in our school are definitely much more than they used to be a decade or 2 decades ago. The conjecture would naturally be that social media plays a large part. But as ma'am was saying earlier, I think it also has to do with not the evolution, but the devolution of our social structure and the support system around children. But yes, technology plays a part, and there is no doubt that mental health issues have increased significantly over the years.
Thank you, Saurav, for being honest.
I would confess, yes, there is a big mental health crisis. And the reason is, when these platforms were invented, all these people had very pious thought process. Nobody imagined that's going to happen. Even, it was rolled out with a very pious intention of connections and helping people. All that was happening. But now they started the behavioral tracking. They started targeted advertisement. They started all that thing which led to digital addiction. And when you have addiction of anything, imagine what's going to happen. So this addiction is taking away the pleasure of childhood. They are not able to understand and differentiate between what is real and what is unreal. And they have aspirations, they have all those fancy things in their mind, and they have nobody to talk to. And if I'm struggling with this challenge, and we have a peer educator program in our school, and so this is a CBSE driven initiative, and I feel that the best is some of the student volunteers have come up and they are saying that we are ready to take it. Of course, they are being trained, but I think it's a long way to go.
So thank you for that confession. I would want to go to Sharad sir and then Minal ma'am for this.
Whether we call it a crisis or not, but the signs are evident. And like Sachin ji mentioned that, it started in a benign manner when social media platforms were designed for networking. But I remember very clearly this was 2020 when a docu-drama was released and it had the title The Social Dilemma. And you see the tech experts who were behind the development of these platforms themselves giving a witness that they don't allow their own kids to use these. These are tech experts from the Silicon Valley, and they knew the algorithms that were planted into these platforms were to influence, drive, and have these kids, their thought process into consumerism and all sorts of influences in certain directions. So they knew that it's not going to do a great help to their kids, and so they kept their kids away. And now it's almost 6 years. I can see the ramifications of the fears they had. They are coming alive, and we have this case just a few days ago. Los Angeles jury giving a verdict, and I think Meta, basket of apps, and Google, they have to dole out 6 million.
Yeah, some 6 million, of course, but the next day there was another federal court of law which fined, I think, some 580 million on Meta again next day. I'll come to that, but very quickly, Minal, your point on is there a is there a mental crisis because of social media in your school?
Is there a mental health crisis in our school? Oh yes. Not just in our school, I think there's a mental health crisis in our nation, and our school is a part of our nation. It's not just the students. We regularly, so we have a counseling cell that is busiest than ever, and we have everybody from parents to teachers reaching out, and the emotional literacy or the emotional regulation that we took for granted as we were growing up, or that was a part of our DNA, somehow seems to have broken at multiple levels, and that of course percolates to the student as well.
No, I think I'll stop you right there. I mean, thank you for the honest confession. Now we are talking, and more importantly, my next question is: when a child is struggling because of their online life, is your school equipped to handle it? I mean, do you have a protocol, a trained counselor, a structured response involving parents, or does the child simply get told spend less time on your phone? What's your take on that?
So in our school, we take mental health very, very seriously. As I said, we have a counseling cell, a dedicated cell with 3 counselors, and all our teachers are trained to look out for signs of emotional anxiety or emotional distress. More than that, we also work with our leadership to have them understand. See, at the end of the day, one counselor across some 200, 500 or 1000 students is not going to be able to reach out. Every adult walking the school campus has to know and has to be emotionally literate to be able to see signs of trouble. So we work with our leadership and say the Anxious Generation, the seminal book for all things social media.
How is that possible for schools which has 5,000 students?
It's possible if you make an investment. Everything is possible. It's about your commitment to it. So as I said, starting with as good as simple reading circles for your leadership. So Anxious Generation is a compulsory read for our leadership team. This year we've subscribed Anxious Generation, The Amazing Generation, as a book for our as a part of our book list for our students grades 5 to 8. So equipping the students themselves to understand what is it that they're going through so that they make better choices. Having more circle time, having more play time. Let the children get together, play, fight, be with themselves. Just making those investments in the emotional landscape. See, Ravi, at the end of the day, you've got to understand. We as schools became how we look the way we do because we were custodians of literacy and knowledge when we started. Today, content, literacy or knowledge, all of that is far more easily available through apps or through their own parents or through their circles. Today, the schools need to provide that which is lacking back home. Earlier, it was literacy that was lacking back home. Today, it is not. Today, it is something else. Today, they need handholding in this landscape. And I believe as schools, that is where our investments should be. And yeah, that's how we are working with it. Are we extremely successful and we have no issues? Hell no. No, we have a lot of issues. But we are aware of it and we are fighting it. And of course, we keep the parent in the loop. We do a lot of parent discussions. We invite the parents for a lot of talks and all of it. So even in orientation, so if you have whether board orientations or key or higher grades orientation, even a grade 5 orientation, we'll go up to the parent and say that, listen, you may be concerned about curriculum, syllabus, etc., but here are our concerns. This is what your children come back and tell us. Can you do something about this? Or would you mind being open to it when the school comes back and tells you this?
So you're flipping the PTM to TPM, yeah?
Well...
Anyone else, or should I move on to my next question? I mean, I would really want 1-2 liners from all of you about how are you managing this in your school?
I think, while counseling, you're right. I mean, you can only have so many counselors and they can only approach so many children. I think it's important for our generation to really listen to children. Whatever we try and do is from our perspective, and our lives are so different that I think it's very important to spend more time trying to understand what it is that they're going through. And I believe that once they believe that you are willing to come to their level, that's when they'll open up and that's when we'll be able to help. Otherwise, we're just being pedantic,
I feel like in our school, out of our 5 core values, one core value is responsibility. And about responsibility, I put it like, जिम्मेदारी ली जाती है, जिम्मेदारी दी नहीं जाती. So we are trying to create that culture in a school where I feel student voice matters a lot. This problem cannot be solved until and unless all stakeholders come together. And children are, they have this tendency to ask why. If there's no logical explanation given to them, if the why is not answered, they perhaps will never be able to solve this challenge. And I feel the peer educator program, which I was mentioning earlier, where some of them, I mean, you identify those students who are very sincere about it, who understand, who are guided by a group of teachers who say, okay, fine, from me, let us reach out to the friends in the classes. Say, imagine a grade 10 student going to grade 6, and children have this tendency to connect with their peers more than adults. So if this goes through them, we are trying our bit to solve it slowly and gradually. But as I said, it is not an easy road to walk. We will take a jolly good time. But end of the day, until and unless there is a consistency in the whole system, everybody thinks that this is something which we need to solve, the problem will never be solved.
I agree with you. You rightly mentioned when the how is clear, why becomes easy. I agree with that. Sharad sir, your take on that?
Yeah. For my school, it's, the mainstay is engaging the parents, the parent body, because when the child is in the school, there's hardly any time for a child or an option to get stuck to the mobile phone. So a greater engagement on part of the parents and to help them understand and to have some kind of regulation at home is the way where they can probably help a child not get addicted to this device. So that's why I said no to the banning, because our society, especially in our country, we have come across similar challenges like, I would call it a tobacco paradox time for our society. Tobacco, everyone knows the harms and all, but who stops it? And is it the banning of tobacco that has stopped the usage among various age groups, and also about the license to drive or ride a motorbike and wearing of helmets. Is the consciousness, is the awareness among the society, and the parents have to play a very important role. So more and more programs to engage parents and to find opportunities during programs, speeches, functions, that we have to bring up this issue again and again, because we are human beings. We get carried away with time and compulsions and the tasks we have on hand. So constant reminders are important. Children probably will not get those reminders when they are on social media.
But I would like to
Yeah.
add to what Sharad sir was saying. He mentioned about the age, like marriage has an age, driving has an age, voting has an age. So why they are age? Why there is an age to this? Why? Because we know a human is ready at this age to handle it properly. Now, if we are giving children below a certain age devices and exposure to the technology or those social media platforms, and they do not know how to absorb that content, and again, all the challenges are rooted to this problem only. So I think banning, let us not say understand the literal meaning of that ban, but restricted use. And how do we ensure that it is age appropriate and say in a schooling journey, class specific exposure should be given.
So the age conundrum, I mean, at 18, a child is wise enough to vote for the country, but not wise enough to consume alcohol. I mean, the drinking age is 21.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So that is the reason. I mean, there are thinkers who are doing this.
Let me pause here. For most of human history, childhood was shaped by three institutions: family, school, community. Today, there is a fourth, and it is more powerful than the other three combined: the algorithm. And we have always said it is designed for engagement. But this month, a California jury said something stronger. A child's suffering was not a side effect. It was the product of deliberate design: infinite scroll, autoplay, algorithmic recommendations, compulsive notifications. The jury was told to ignore the content entirely. They evaluated only one thing: how the system was built. The design itself was the defendant, and 12 jurors found it guilty. $6 million in damages, Meta bearing 70%. One day later, a second jury in New Mexico ordered Meta to pay $375 million for enabling child predators on its platforms. 2 juries, 2 states, 1 week. So when we debate whether to ban social media for children, we are not debating access to a neutral tool. We are debating whether children should be inside a system that courts of law, not activists, not researchers, not parents, but courts of law have found exploitative by design. That changes the question entirely. Let me bring this into your schools. Most schools have a rule: no phone. Leave them at the gate, keep them in the bag. But children are not leaving their digital lives at the gate. They're bringing them in their anxiety, in their friendships, in their self-worth, in their attention spans. What is the one thing schools must start doing that most are not doing today to truly address this? Not what government should do, not what platforms should do. What's the role schools should play? Let's not talk about the parent. We have already spoken about, and the government. What is your responsibility as the school leader? What collectively you can do to solve this?
I'd like to say, firstly, educate the child and the parent. So pull out resources, pull out time and energy, because there is no way a ban. The moment you ban something, it becomes even more interesting.
Yeah.
The problems with ban is it suddenly feels like, oh, this is a no-go zone, which means me, the teenager brain, I want to do it the first thing. So while bans, as all of us and even I agree, is required, along with that, what is required is the education to understand why is this ban there in the first place. So educating the child, educating the parent, that is the first thing that the school can do, and schools are at that pivot, are at that place where they can do it. Even today, schools hold that responsibility, and the parents will listen to the schools a lot more than they would to any other space. So I think it behooves us to educate our parents a lot more about what is social media really doing, because in the parents' mind, the social media is like a pacifier. मैंने ये दे दिया है phone, तो I can see मेरा बच्चा कहीं जाएगा नहीं. My child will be safe if there is a phone and all of that. So the first thing that the schools can do is definitely that. The second thing that I would say is we need to stop eating recess, and we need to stop guarding the kids in such a manner that they cannot have free interaction with each other. More play, more time after school, something or the other that brings the children together rather than something that keeps them apart. And not adult supervised play. I'm not talking sports classes, I'm not talking more PE classes. I'm simply talking free recess time. So I believe there are one or two things that the schools can do. These would be a good step to begin with.
I think we also need to address the emotion, the logic of a child, and to help a child understand and constantly talk about these issues. Maybe bring in some case studies and help children to understand how it's impacting their peers across the globe. So authentic case studies probably will help children to understand the pros and cons of it, and we have to help them become more responsible in the usage. But the very nature of this product is addictive. So what can be a super better addiction available to a child? Can we make our teaching learning process more interesting, give them something more exciting, different other avenues for dopamine release and to, so we have to pull our act together.
Are you saying you want to compete with Instagram?
We wouldn't need to. So honestly, like what you said, we need to give our students that space. Like I'm sure in a boarding school that is happening. Recently, our students went on this edu tour and all of that. Okay, now these are high school students without phones. They were to go for 8 days, 7 days, whatever, 10 days. And when they came back, I asked them about, did you guys miss the phones? And there was this unequivocal answer of saying, no, why would we miss our phones? We had everybody around us. So it's not that the children need phones. It's just that children are lonely and phones become that connection. And then slowly, steadily, it starts to replace real connection. So if we can create and enhance those connections, then children probably don't need it as much.
I think I get your point. When we were back in our school days, when smartphones were not introduced, we were compelled to go out of the house and look for friends. Where are you? What are you doing? And calling from the landlines. I get where you're coming from.
People are doing biohacks. They're trying to fight their sugar cravings and carb-rich diet, which gives them those spikes and then the crashes. So in the same way, I think we can try with social media. Try to give them equally healthy options. Protein and fat-rich diet. So we have to invent. We have to work hard. Maybe the tech companies need to create something more healthy and safer, and that's what their responsibility. They've raked in huge sums of money. Now they should consider, with all these verdicts, that what's their next responsibility towards the society and the coming generations. And the schools can do a fantastic job, I think.
And I think just to add to this, I think schools and tech companies should collaborate. There should be some way where there should be some pilots, some samples, something that can happen within the school system where tech companies can get this idea actually what happens in a school. Sometimes you use your common sense, your childhood, all those things, but you need to understand the generation today. You need to understand what is their life, how do they think. Some innovative idea like, you have a banking app, you have a fixed login. After some time, you are logged out, and if you do it 2 to 3 times, then the 4th time probably you will not be able to enter that platform. So can these kind of inputs from the school where we want to limit the screen time, so can we give them ideas as to how do you want this to happen? So they say, okay, fine, what is your problem statement? So this problem statement is shared by the school, understood by the tech company, and then they find a solution. So then they could say, okay, fine, we talk about content, okay, this is the way we can put filters. If they talk about the usage of the platform, okay, this is the way. So these all pilots needs to run with a collaboration between different kind of schools. Maybe they can choose a government school and a private school and a boarding school and a co-ed school and a day boys school and all kind of boards and all. And this data will perhaps help the companies to evaluate and understand what is the algorithm they need to.
Yeah, I'd like to revisit that in 2050. What you're saying.
So I'd just like to add. I that's a well-intentioned argument, but I think it doesn't take into the account the conflation of the capitalist economy that we're part of.
Yes,
There
I
is
know.
no education company who
That
is
we want
remotely interested
in
in the
reducing.
well-being of children. Let's face.
Thank you. That's a strong statement for my
Yeah, no. I mean, what I'm
Taylor
saying
and
is, these social media companies, it's very true. I mean, the fact that they're creating algorithms to addict them obviously means that the well-being of the child is the last resort. I think solutions have to be found closer to home. There are two things I'd like to say. Firstly, parents have to start becoming parents again. I mean, I don't know where along the line suddenly parenting, some generation somewhere around 1995 to 2005 decided that parenting means never saying no to your child, giving in to every whim and fancy. I've heard no 1,000 times, and that hasn't worsened my relationship with my parents. Parents need to say no because it is not good for their children. And secondly, at school levels, we need to discuss things with them at a more regular. It's like this, we have these one-off, we tick the boxes like once a term. Yes, we did a digital security program. A child will not understand something, it has to be hammered home daily. Small things like in our school, we deal with things like greet people when you meet them. I say it every week and then it happens. Otherwise, so these are the two things. I think the main issue really here is the parenting issue. And parents have to realize that this kind of pleasing our children attitude is only killing them with kindness in the long run. I think that's the main.
I think their counter would be, we are paying you the fee, right? I mean, that amount of fee. Saurav ji, take care of that, right?
No. Let me say that. I think parents have been paying fees for many generations, but they haven't stopped loving their children. And loving your child is very different from wanting to be the most popular person in your child's life. And this is what I'm talking about. They need to exercise parental love, and parental love sometimes means having to do things which are going to make you unpopular with your child as well.
We call this show the education verdict for a reason, because every debate must end with one. I want each one of you to give me your final position in one honest gap. One thing your school is not doing today that it should be doing.
So I would say that one thing which we definitely can do more of is to try and have discussions about these issues before there's a crisis. I think quite often we are reacting to situations and problems that come, as opposed to kind of having very regular sessions before the problem arises.
But there is a problem at hand, Saurav. I mean, what's your take on
So
that?
what I meant by that was that rather than trying to address when we see a crisis related to excess use of social media, I think be very proactive and continuously, as somebody else was pointing out, have regular conversations and educate them about why we want to ban social media, why it's bad for them, and have those regular conversations. I think that's something which we're not doing as much of.
So you're not telling me what is that one thing your school is not doing today that it should be doing?
What I just said that, right? What would you like me to say?
I think my position stands at banning the social media for a particular age. And what we as a school yet to do a little more aggressively is perhaps increasing conversations with the parent community more and asking them to involve in the process of schooling together with us a little more. I do not know whether we'll be able to get success in this or not, but I feel that especially in the formative years and the primary years, we must have a lot of parental orientation and do the preventive care and give them the right reasoning that why do we do what we do. So this why is very important, and parental involvement with school, I think, is something which I'll try and invest a little more time and energy as a school.
From this conversation, I think I've been able to think and gather and get a little more motivated towards developing a database for our students, and also probably stay engaged with them as they pass out, so that they give us feedback whether it helped them and the families. So probably a technically oriented database generation of how the child handled social media influences and the screen time and all. Probably if we can keep track, help the parents to deal with that in a more technical, more scientific manner, probably we have to do something on those lines.
One thing our school is not doing as well as we would like, definitely the parent partnership program that many of my co-panelists have spoken about. So do we need to work with them hand in hand and make them understand where do we stand in the context of the children? Definitely. So that's one area we can do a lot better in. The other, I think, is in our high school program, where we've not been, so our early years or our middle years, primary years, middle years, you will find a lot more experiential, hands-on learning and all that. Our high school program somehow becomes so stuck to boards or becomes so academic in nature at times that it is difficult for us to tell the child to not be on screen or to do something else. And then that program leads to a lot more screen time. While we believe it is positive screen time and we believe it is for the studies and all of that, we don't know oftentimes what that screen time might be. So maybe rejigging our high school program and looking at it from a more holistic perspective, and again working with parents for the same towards it.
So, Minal, how many total teachers and how many counselors did you have in your school?
We have a teaching staff of around 55 to 60 and we have 3 full-time counselors.
How about you, Sharad sir?
Close to 120, and then counselors about the same, but then we ensure the other teachers also double up and they are like oriented and they are sensitive to such matters and they can support the panel of counselors we have.
So we have close to 200 teachers and around 5 counselors full-time on our payrolls.
And how about you, sir?
So we have 800 students. We have about 120 teachers. We have 4 counselors full-time, but we regularly train our teachers in something called emotional first aid. So immediate problems, we hope that there's a larger group, but we have 4 counselors at the
I
moment.
think there is a solution out there. I mean, if there could be investment in converting your other teaching staff into kind of counselors, of course, I mean, that could be a solution, because my son goes to a boarding school and he's very attached to his housemaster, and I think, I mean, that's where I am very relaxed, because I mean, when we speak, a lot of stories come out, and I think, I mean, housemasters also have played a very important role in boarding schools.
I'll be honest, because education verdict, be honest. It is a myth that every teacher can become a counselor. It looks that, okay, fine, she's in the teaching profession, but it takes a lot of metal to be a counselor, because understanding human emotions, responding to the question what to speak, when to speak, how to speak, the tone, the pitch, there's so many aspects related to this. My firm belief is I really want every teacher to be a counselor, because that is the way teaching profession was actually designed. They need to understand and connect with the child. But today, I think we are failing as an organization, as an institution. I'm just talk about my school. I do not know about others, but this is one of my pain area. I really want every teacher of mine to be and behave like a counselor, but I'm struggling as to how to do that. Because, sometimes I ask this question to myself. She's born at a particular place, grown up in a particular culture, went to a particular school, and went to a school for her first job, and she was appreciated like anything in that job. Then suddenly she changes her city, comes to another city, joins her school, and she is a very average and a below average performer. What's wrong? Maybe that school did not appreciate the real requirement from the teaching profession. It was just doing it. But we are one notch better, kind of, where we want this thing to happen. So I really need an answer to this. How can we make every teacher as a counselor?
I see some rebuttals coming in.
Yeah.
It's getting interesting.
Go ahead.
So I think it would be unwise of us to expect every teacher to be a counselor. As you only rightly mentioned, counseling is a very, very, very difficult job, and it is a special skill that one needs to have. Expecting our teachers, as it is, our teachers are like, Murti ki tarah, she's the mother also, and she's the teacher also, and she's the person who's also the mentor and all of that. So adding one more expectation on her, I think would be on the teacher is a little too much to ask. I believe even if our teachers just have the understanding of what emotional landscape is and refer it to the council. Sometimes
But
we are
this is exactly my question. How would she understand this?
so one thing is that I am the counselor and I'm able to counsel. The other is that I know that this requires help, that this is a red flag, that I'm able to tell the signs, and then I can take it to the relevant person.
So can I just
Yeah.
butt in a little bit? Taking a cue from what Ravi was talking about, the whole housemaster system, which is very fundamental to boarding schools. But it's almost like a pyramid, right? Like every teacher cannot be a counselor, every
Yeah.
teacher cannot be a HOD, right? But there is a layering.
Yes.
How do they get to know what there is this saying, right, that every form of behavior is a form of communication. If we do enough training of our teachers to see, for example, as somebody just pointed out, if a student who's doing very well suddenly drops, we have to train our teachers that our first
Look for
instinct
signs.
shouldn't be, why aren't you paying attention, but pass that on maybe to the tutor. So we have a tutor system, so this is what we're trying to do in our school, that you red flag it immediately, that this guy's grades are dropping. Tutor has a word with him, tries to see if he feels that it needs escalation, brings it to the housemaster, and if a trained counselor is required, then because of course we have only 4 counselors, we have 800 children, so we have about 4,000 problems on a daily basis, right? But the idea really, as everybody was saying also, is that the signals should be picked up and they should be escalated as and when required. And maybe the answer is that schools need to invest in more counselors as well. That may be the, where some years ago, sports teachers were not considered necessary. But now they're there everywhere. Now maybe we need to invest in more counselors.
So maybe fewer devices and more counselors.
Perhaps, yeah.
So let me end with this. Governments can ban, platforms can be fined, parents can monitor, but the child sitting in your classroom tomorrow morning has already spent hours inside a system that was not designed for their well-being. They've already compared themselves, already consumed something they were not ready for, already formed beliefs about themselves without guidance. And that is the reality. So the question is not just should we ban? The question is, do we understand what we are allowing? Because until we do, we are not regulating technology. We are reacting to it. Before we sign off, we are not chasing views. We are chasing conversations. If this made you think, agree, disagree, or even uncomfortable, we want to hear from you. Drop your views in the comments because the real conversation starts after this ends. This is The Education Verdict. Straight questions, real answers, no fluff. Co-powered by Hop Class and Mayoor School, Jaipur. Good night.